agenda.
Good morning. We will now re-adjourn the meeting of May 20th. I have a quick announcement before we continue. The Catalina Humane Society, as you all know, is sponsoring their low-cost vaccine clinic. And if you buy a voucher for $5, it will go toward the fees required for the vaccinations. There's the rabies, which is $6, the DHLPP, $15, and the Bordetella, which is $15. And on Friday from 11:30 to 1, Diane Stone will be in the arcade selling the vouchers. I hope I've got those times correct. But we'd like everybody to go out and participate. It is a very wonderful program for your pet and quite economical. So thank you. And it is sponsored by the Humane Society. Okay. We'll go back to general business. Item number 4, is that correct?
Yes, Mayor. Item number 4, you obviously remember from our last meeting, we began the process of presenting City Council policies for the Council to consider. These are policies that could serve as a reference tool and a guide for the Council. And so staff has brought forth, at the last meeting we brought forward 2 chapters, where the thought being that we would bring them to you in pieces rather than dumping off a whole draft policy on your lap for you having to eat in one sitting. So today we bring to you 3 policies, one being, this I guess is somewhat obvious, right, but a purpose of the policies, next one being a basis of authority, and then the third being meeting policies. And these policies are used in other agencies. We have taken examples and reskinned them, if you will, and tailored them as we think they could work well for this council. The City Attorney's Office and the City Manager's Office has worked collaboratively on this effort. And I defer to the City Attorney if you had anything additional you'd like to say on this particular matter.
Yeah, just to highlight, just to go over some of the quote highlights. The first chapter is just purpose of council policies. There's nothing really there other than we are enacting these. On basis of authority, the second, some key things are under 2.1. It's important to understand that that council members have no individual authority, and as individuals, you cannot commit the city to any act, policy, or expenditure. It has to be done as the council acting as a whole. Under 2.3, the powers of the mayor. The mayor is basically the presiding officer at all council meetings, which means the mayor's role is to run the council meetings. Other than that, and the ability to appoint people to the planning commission upon the consent of the council, the mayor is the same as any other council person. But you know, the big thing is the mayor runs the meetings. Under members of council, 2.4, again we have 2.4.4. The mayor is to conduct all meetings. 2.4.5. Remember that councils should abstain from considering an item or participating in an item that you have a conflict of interest. I think on June 3rd, we're going to be having during the day, a conflict of interest. Oh, I think it's right before the meeting, a 2-hour conflict of interest workshop.
1 to 3.
It's 1 to 3. Okay. It's required under California state law that you do this every 2 years, and so we're going to have that that afternoon. 2.4.6 goes into the fact that requests for information should be channeled through the city manager. And the next chapter is on meetings, and basically this is a summary of the Brown Act, which basically provides that meetings have to be noticed. There are certain notice requirements, generally 72 hours before a meeting for a regular meeting, 24 for a special, and it reminds you that you cannot vote on or take action on anything not on the agenda. Again, at the ethics training, we'll go into that in great detail. So that's a general summary of the policies. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I was, pardon me, I'm a little concerned sometimes about the notification process, either on non-emergency meetings or just almost everything. I know that in the future we will be doing our best to get those agenda packets out, but and to give the community just a little, a little more response time, a little more time to review something, as well as ourselves. But some of the things, if things have to be written, then you only have to give them 24, like on 3.4.2, notification shall be in writing at least 24 hours prior.
Yeah, that's a special meeting. In other words,
non-emergency special council meeting.
Right.
yeah, the Brown Act allows you have your regularly set meetings. If you wanted to have a special meeting, what the Brown Act says is you only have to give 24 hours notice. Doesn't mean that we can't give more, but by law it has to be at least 24 hours notice.
I guess because that could be, I mean, it could be an action item in which we're voting.
Oh, it could be?
Yes,
So in
absolutely.
that regard,
But that's just the law allows for you to
Right.
do that if you must. You don't. We would never, unless it was something of a serious, urgent matter, we would never recommend that to you.
Okay.
We would always, just like you, want to allow for the normal posting. We think that's a better way to go as well. We don't want to rush you into any type of decision, but there will be times, maybe with some example being
Monday
pending
morning.
litigation, or there, something where we absolutely have to convene, where we may have to invoke that, but that would never be our first choice.
okay. And
I
also,
think that serves very well, like for Monday, when we had dignitaries in town, and rather
Right.
than, we had a short period of time to meet with them, calling a special meeting so that three of us could
be
meet
together.
at that time.
Yeah, okay. And also 3.5.2, since our newspaper does only newspapers come out on a weekly basis, I would like us to really try to work with our local radio station
Sure.
to funnel that information to them as well, so they can make announcements or put it on somehow. I'd like to see the community use the radio station more, including ourselves.
I know there's probably at least one staff member who's going to be very excited about that.
No, no.
So I will make sure he's aware.
And then on 3.8.5, the entire agenda packet shall be provided to any person who has filed a written request.
Yeah.
So is that something that they would do, and then every time after that they would get it, or just for that one particular time?
What the Brown Act provides, that if someone wants to receive a written notice of the agenda, they file a request with the city clerk, which is good for 1 year. So they get written notice the same way you do of all meetings for a year period.
Okay.
So it's one time, and you can specify, I just want to receive, I think AT&T has a standing request for, like, I only want to receive notice for meetings dealing with, certain rates
I
or
see.
something. But so you can make it for a blanket request for the whole year, or it's more difficult if you say only meetings involving,
Right.
X. But people can do that.
Okay, perfect.
Mayor Marshall, we get requests all the time. People either walk into the counter to get the full packet or on a particular staff item, or we email it to them, or we fax it to them. So we get those requests almost every meeting.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
I have a few, of course. Scott, you kind of went over the basics of section 2.1, but I would like for us to read those into the record, if you don't mind.
Okay.
2.1.1 and 2.1.2, just so they're clearly stated on the record.
Got it. The city council is the unit of, that's 2.2.1, is the city council is the unit of authority for establishing policy within the city. Apart from their normal functions as part of this unit, council members have no individual authority. As individuals, council members may not commit the city to any policy, act, or expenditure. 2.1.2 provides council members do not represent any fractional segment of the community within which the city is located, but are rather a part of the body which represents and enacts for the community as a whole.
Great, thank you. And then
And just if I could interject, there are no, so obviously there are no districts
Right.
here. Everybody is elected at large, so
Right.
everybody represents everyone. on the
Right.
council.
Okay, and on item 2.4.6, request by individual council members for substantive information and/or research from city staff will be channeled through the city manager. I believe will should be shall, which is shall equaling must. That's more of a, if I want substantial information from a staff member, that should be required to go through the city manager. I just want to make sure that that becomes a requirement and there's no, let's see, sometimes, yeah, on 3.2.1, first and third, open session. When we're talking about a closed session, can we just add a subtopic in there just to illustrate what is discussed in closed sessions? Something that says closed session constitutes items,
Okay.
this, and this, just so it's on record there.
What, was that included in that first little policy packet he gave us about closed sessions?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, okay, actually, you're right. And then 3.3.1, council workshops shall be held on an as-needed basis. Can we just add the regular lines that are in the rest of this packet and noticed accordingly? And
Okay.
there's a pretty standard sentence we have. Okay, then on 3.4.1, it reads, non-emergency special council meetings may be called by the mayor or by a majority of the council in accordance with the Ralph M. Brown Act. My question is, so the mayor can call a special council meeting all on her own without having a majority request, but the council members cannot?
That's the way it's written. We can change that if you want to make it. We can adjust that however you want.
I don't know how you guys feel about it, but if we're going to call a special meeting, I think it makes sense to have a majority vote to call a special meeting.
Right, there's nothing in the Brown Act that specifies that
Right.
a mayor has that particular authority.
Okay.
So do you want to have a discussion on that one?
I don't know if,
So they can be any councilman?
Well,
no,
That-
not
that's-
right now.
no.
Because I guess the reason is to have if a council member could have a special meeting, there's obviously a lot of inconvenience in terms of this is not going to be on your regular day. It may be in the middle of the day. And so the thought there is that we should have some consensus among the council that we're going to have a special council meeting. There's also cost in terms of,
Right.
whether you need, staff to come, whether you need legal counsel there, so we just thought it's either the mayor who runs the meetings or a majority of the council. The only thing the Brown Act allows you to do that's not at a meeting collectively is talking about scheduling a meeting. So you can talk among yourselves
how they were gonna
about the fact that I want to have a meeting on this day. Are you available? The Brown Act allows you to do that. So
Right.
it's the one weird exception.
Well, it has to be, or else how could you get a
Right.
majority? No, okay.
So do you want to?
I guess my recommendation is, and Annie, I mean, no offense to you whatsoever, but I would prefer not to see any of us be able to call a special meeting without a majority vote. I just want to make that flat.
So
Because,
eliminate the word mayor and just say
Right.
the majority of the
Exactly.
council.
yeah, just a majority of the council.
Let me just, or can I, now looking at this, can I change the mayor to city manager? Because sometimes, obviously, something
Yeah.
comes up and the city manager will need, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
something happens, I need to call the special meeting. So is that
I'm okay with
appropriate?
that.
That
Okay.
works for me.
All right.
Okay, then, on 3.8.1, Scott, I can give you my notes later. Any council member may call the city manager and request any item to be placed on the regular meeting agenda at a regular council meeting or workshop. Should that request be in writing rather than just a phone call to add this to a meeting? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter for the Brown Act, but if you want to make it in writing, we can easily do that.
I don't, I work at your pleasure. I don't want to make things difficult for you guys. I mean, I will sometimes tell you if you come to me with a request. If I think that maybe you might have some challenges with it, I might take the liberty to say, could we look at moving that to a different meeting or something like that? But I wouldn't want to make it onerous that if you wanted something on a meeting, you felt that you had to go through, jump through hoops, I see that as my job to facilitate what you're trying to do.
Well, and kind of in line with that, I'd made a note that the timing of that. So if the agenda goes out on Friday and we come up on a Tuesday or a Wednesday and go, throw this on,
Right.
We need to be respectful of the timelines for the agendas and things. So I don't know that we need to say that it has to be in by a certain time, but I think we need to be courteous to the fact that we can't just slam it at you,
Okay.
And
That's understood, but sometimes things are pressing and they come up last minute, so that's why it's nice to be able to call Ben and he's always there, so.
Right.
yeah.
Text me or whatever you want to do, so it's all fine.
Okay, then an easy one, 3.10.4.1.
Hang on, 3.10.4.1, yes.
I just wanted to, if a member of the public desires to speak on a matter not appearing on the agenda, the member should speak during the period for public comments. Speakers are requested to give their name. Are they required to give their address as well?
No,
Oh.
they don't even have to give their name.
Right.
They technically don't have to give their name and address, but it is good sometimes, one, to identify the person so we can understand where they're coming from, which may make their comments more relevant. And then for the Planning Commission, especially, or if there's an appeal, the address of the person can be a useful piece of information, so whether they're impacted by something, and so. But
It's a project down the street from where they
right,
live.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
not required,
Okay.
but it's requested.
Okay. And then my last one.
Actually, while we're on this section, I'm sorry
sure.
to
No,
interrupt
you're
really
fine.
quick. I'm just wondering, this is just a procedural thing, but 3.10.4.2, 5 minutes may be allocated to each speaker to each subject matter. Now, we're just throwing this out there. We are here to help in your meeting, okay? So we have the mechanism and we would be happy to deploy it if you wanted us to start enforcing this. We could, as they do in a lot of other agencies, just start the clock every time there's a speaker and politely advise that speaker when they're approaching 30 seconds until 5 minutes, and then just let them know at the end of that duration, I'm sorry, your 5 minutes are allocated at this point. And it's up to you, but we would be happy to start enforcing that in the spirit of maybe moving some discussions along, or those that feel inclined to speak several times on the same discussion that maybe already got their point across in the first salvo.
Yeah, my question would be, once you started the dialogue and their 5 minutes was up, then they go sit down and there's discussion on it. Now that person's going to want to come back up. Does he get another 5 minutes, or how are we going to control that?
It would be our recommendation that you get it all in just
5 minutes.
Just to allow everyone to have an opportunity, and that also, what I've seen in other agencies is that sometimes requires people to focus. They to be prepared. Like, okay, this is all that. I mean, yes, the downside is sometimes there's additional discussion that may come up that they hadn't considered, but at the same time, it sometimes moves the meeting along.
I get the spirit of it.
They can always request additional time, and usually, as the mayor's role is running the meetings, the mayor can grant additional time.
But
If there's new
If
information.
there's new information.
right, okay, new information.
And the other thing is, like at the beginning of the meetings or during an item, it's for public comment,
Correct.
and that it means it's not public dialogue. It can be dialogue if you want it to be dialogue, but you don't have to respond. The whole purpose of public comment is taking information from the public. Some agencies will take information and they won't ever respond. and some agencies respond to everything that is said. And so again, it's the style, how you want to run your meetings, but you don't need to engage if you don't want to. It's public comment, not public dialogue.
But this is for information not on the agenda.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just
Not on the agenda, or for an item that's on the agenda, if you
Sure,
have
both.
public comments coming up, they can comment and you don't have to ask. You
So
know.
can I ask for clarification? Because
Yeah.
I thought I understood everything we were talking about till Oli's comment. So oral communication at the very beginning of the agenda is 3 minutes, though. That's 3 minutes. It's the agenda items, when they come up, is 5 minutes.
Yeah, this is, the 5 minutes is for an agenda item.
Okay.
So, here's one more.
Okay,
Just out of
What-
curiosity, here's one more thing.
Okay.
So somebody's talking on it, talking about whatever they're talking about, the information they're bringing us. And somebody sitting next to him goes, well, he could have my 5 minutes. Is that going to be acceptable?
I think that's also
Most-
a good point, and it
I
could
mean,
fall
somebody
under the-
might say, well,
yeah, mayor-
he could have
mayor's
my
purview,
5
right?
minutes.
Yeah,
And so now he's got 10 minutes.
most agencies
Just a
allow
question.
allow that to happen.
Yeah.
I'm just
You
throwing it
know,
out there. I didn't.
There are other ways, again, which will be discussed at the workshop. Sometimes if you have a large crowd, it makes sense to get a show of hands. Is to encourage people, if you have a lot of speakers, to encourage speakers to, if they agree with the comments, say ditto, and then bring something new, rather than have the same thing heard
Be repetition.
20 times
Yeah.
over.
Be
But
redundant.
these are tools that again are within the purview of the council, and the mayor is running the meeting to manage the meeting.
And so I guess just to beat this to absolute death, if you'd like a line put in there where, city staff shall enforce this rule, we would be happy to do that, if you wanted us to. If you don't want us to,
no, I don't think it's necessary because, I mean, maybe there will be situations where people hit the 5 minute mark and then the mayor decides, correction, she runs the meeting. You can go ahead and finish your thought. At that said, we want people to come up and participate because in the past, the problem has been people have been intimidated to come up and speak. So I think we want to encourage that. We want to encourage public involvement. At the same time, we don't want somebody to run the meeting. We do want them to finish their thought process, though.
Anybody else have a comment on that?
Do we have a special clock for Scott?
I know, but Denise has one.
Four.
We're
I was
still
gonna
in the
say it.
same
I know.
meeting. Okay.
Oh, new meeting.
No, it's an adjourned meeting.
It's an adjourned meeting. Okay.
Do you have anybody have a feeling for that? The clock thing, or do we?
I would like to reserve the right, I guess is probably the best wording to use. I also agree, I'd love to see more people participate in our meetings. We certainly all get a lot of participation on the street, but would love to see more of that in the audience. But I also, a half an hour here, then the next person, and 40 minutes for this person, 50 minutes for that person, I think prohibits us from being able to do other things that we need to accomplish in an agenda. So perhaps we reserve the right to continue that conversation to a forward meeting, or I'm not really sure how to say it, but I think I'd like to reserve the right to limit it.
Absolutely.
Well, perhaps if we know it's a topic of great discussion and the room is full, that's when we kind of take the liberty to reserve that right to do that, so that, because there will be a lot of redundancy in those kinds of conversations, perhaps. But it also says, okay, the council may take no action. Okay, is it the council cannot take action on any item brought up at the public comment section?
Correct.
We cannot.
You
So
cannot.
maybe that's better said, that may take no. May take no sounds like, I don't know, it sounds kind
which, for
Okay.
clarification,
on
which subject?
310.4.1,
Okay, thank you.
and then it says,
Cannot. Got it.
cannot take any
There you
action on
go.
an item, and except to refer the matter to staff or place it on a future agenda. So if the comments really get going strong, we're not gonna take any action anyway. So we say, boy, this is really something we need to look into more. Let's put it on the next council agenda, or, or direct staff or defer it. So that's what we're supposed to be doing anyway, not taking action.
And again, and the reason for that whole rule is that if you could take action that night because someone in the audience brings up something that's interesting, if someone isn't paying attention at home,
Right.
or they're away and this is an important issue to them, they have no idea that you're taking this action.
Right.
And so it's not fair because there's been no notice of it. And so again, that's when you can direct staff to put that on the next agenda.
Right.
Or to direct staff to give you additional information to address the concerns
Right.
and bring back a report to council.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to move to my last item. 3.10.5. This is regarding personnel matters and how we conduct ourselves and follow the rules and regulations. But my request is that the last sentence currently reads, all charges or complaints against employees shall be submitted to the city manager for investigation. And I would just like to add in writing.
I agree.
Ben, you're thinking about that one.
Yeah, okay, so in writing could also constitute an email or a text message, I guess. And here's my concern. If it's regarding an employee, I would want that communication to be privileged. I'm wondering about that. I just
To you.
right. so
Well,
Well,
I'm
it
just-
should be.
If it's a charge of misconduct or complaint, it is a private personnel matter. So the public is not, that email is not subject to disclosure
Okay.
to the public. It is something that, because it's a
If we're
personnel
covered
matter,
in that, that's fine. I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure.
it may or may not go into the employee's
So in other words,
personnel
it-
file regarding if there's an investigation done, but
It-
the public
Yeah.
is not going to have access to it.
Okay, that was a concern.
Right, and it certainly is different in the public sector than it is in the private, and
Yeah.
I'm learning more about the public sector. But to just illustrate what I'm suggesting is that, let's say that we see Jen Lavelle grab a public works truck to take
Jen
her...
Monroe.
Jen Monroe, I'm sorry, Jen, to take her paddleboard down to go paddleboarding. And I see that 2 or 3 times. And while I would encourage the paddleboarding, not the use of the city vehicle. So if I were to have sent that to you and then a year down the road, I keep saying, hey, I've told you about this,
Right.
I've told you about that, then you have a track record to go back.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that's kind
no, it
of
makes
what
sense.
I'm
My
saying
only
is-
concern was just the nature of the communication and whether it could be discovered.
No.
And if it can't,
I
then
see.
then we're good.
Okay.
And so are you talking, it could be by phone, it could be by, how do we want to do the
I
written
think if we're,
communication?
I believe if we're going to lodge a complaint on a city employee, we should respectfully do that in writing, email, letter. That's
Any of the, I guess what I'm saying is, could it be any of those, or would we prefer to have it, not text, maybe, but?
my request would be in writing, not text. To me is not writing.
Okay.
Text is like a phone call.
Okay, so the email
but,
or paper.
But that's just my opinion. I'm happy to whatever you guys prefer. I just feel like if you're going to lodge a complaint against an employee, lodge it in writing and maybe put some explanation to why you're lodging a complaint.
I would suggest for if we want to have a record of it, the texts are sometimes fleeting because they're not really on the city server. They're on individuals' phones and stuff, and they can be more easily deleted than an email, which goes to the city email or a letter. So I'll wordsmith that. My recommendation is either email or a hard copy
Okay,
to the city.
yeah.
What if it's a matter that's just something that you feel that the city manager needs to know, but it really doesn't constitute any kind of a something written or in a complaint? Or Scott, does it matter? Like if I have a problem with the city employee, or if I see a problem with one misconduct or whatever it might be, whether I complain to the city manager twice verbally, or whether I complain to him twice on paper? I mean, does it matter? Is there a policy that says, oh, 2 complaints against an employee is going to constitute a reprimandation, something like that? I mean,
There's no policy as such, because the council is deliberately removed from that structure to insulate you, and really, more importantly, to allow you to be that appellate body should an employee ever wish to appeal a decision that I've made. That's the reason why you guys are insulated from
okay.
that, so that you can be completely out of the fray and be fair.
I think it may, for instance,
so what is the
hypothetical.
purpose serve? Yeah, what does the purpose serve of?
Well,
Well, it's to bring something to the city manager's attention
Okay.
for investigation.
Okay, so-
Now, if you are making that charge based upon then the whole issue is when it comes up for if it would ever come up to appeal, then if you've made the charge and you're the one who's complaining, then you probably have to recuse yourself from the appeal, because you'll be a witness.
I think it's the same, Joe, as saying, you know, if you were to lodge a complaint against an employee to the city manager, or say, hey, I don't like this behavior, or I saw this happen, that then becomes an investigation that the city manager looks into. So it's just, even if we were to say, you know, even if we were to give 10 complaints on an employee in a matter of a month's time, it doesn't automatically trigger a reprimand. It automatically triggers each one of those 10 instances to be an investigation that the city manager handles, and doesn't necessarily include us if we were, or whoever makes the complaint.
Okay.
But that employee deserves, or, you know, obligated to have the right, however you want to say it, to have an investigation, because there's always sides to a story. So that's what it means.
So you're asking for a written thing, right?
I just want to see it in writing. If I were to lodge a complaint against an employee, I think the most respectful way to lodge a complaint is to put that into writing and explain the circumstances and explain my viewpoint. That gives, you know, a fair opportunity for the city manager to then investigate the situation and not go based on memory of this is what I think I heard, but go based on fact of this is what I've read and I want to look into this. It may be something that he's not able to look into for a week, or it may be something that, you know, prohibits him from being able to do it for whatever period of time. And I just think that now we're talking hearsay and, you know.
I guess the only other thing I would add is that there's probably going to be plenty of opportunities where there's a concern versus a complaint, right? And
Right.
it could
Yeah.
be, you know, hey, you know, Ben, I observed, you know, this employee doing this today. Can you look into it? That's fine.
Yeah.
Different.
Right.
than,
That's
hey,
not a complaint or
No,
charge of
right.
misconduct.
Yeah.
But that's what I'd like
Yeah.
to do, because if
Yeah.
I go and if I see
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
and what I'll do is I'll document that I talked to you about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I won't write up a whole issue
Right,
on a thing.
right.
You'll get back to me. You'll say, you're in charge of personnel. Hey, I looked into this, blah, blah, blah. Or if there is something,
Yeah.
then we'll get started your documentation. I don't think, if I see something, which I don't think you can't handle,
Right.
then I don't think there'd be
Right.
an issue not writing anything up.
Sure. And some
That would be just my feeling on it.
and some things might just be general observances, right?
Right,
Hey,
yeah,
you know,
right,
why are we
misleading.
why are we would we have employees doing X over here at
Correct.
Y at this time of day?
Again, the importance is if you want there to be an investigation into an employee,
Right.
you know, that's got to be in writing. If it's just like, hey, you know, I saw people during their lunch break goofing off, can you, or whatever, or drinking, can you tell them, you know, drinking, that'd be a written request. That'd be a written request.
Maybe not that.
Maybe not that one, but you
Back
know
to
what
the
I'm saying.
80s, I like that.
But anyway, I just feel more comfortable in that scenario.
Yeah.
Unless, like you say,
Got
unless
it.
you have an investigation. Yeah, correct. I think then there should be something in writing. But if you have a complaint, I like to go to Ben.
Yep.
And he investigates it for me, and then,
Yep.
then at that point, if I don't like it, then I'll say, okay, well, I'm gonna write something up and I'll give you an option.
Yeah.
I don't think that you need any more paperwork that you don't need.
No. And I think
But if
that-
you're gonna do investigation, correct, I think we need to probably have some documentation.
and you'll,
But
you'll,
if you-
Yeah, you'll have plenty, sorry to interrupt, you'll have plenty of times where your constituents are going to be coming
Correct.
to you probably, and
Right.
you're going to be compelled to bring something forward.
Right. That's just my feeling on it. I don't-
And there are certain complaints that are, if you make them, are legally required to be in writing. We'll be having that discussion probably next week on the sexual harassment training. So we'll talk about that more later tonight.
That's just my feeling.
You didn't think this little policy thing
I
was going
know.
to generate so much discussion, did you?
I'm glad it did, though.
Good discussion. Clarifies it well. Okay, would anybody, is there a motion to?
Well, hang on, do we have any
Oh,
public
Oh,
comments?
public,
Any public
oh, and I
comments?
forgot to ask.
Wait,
The only guys were the same ones that did last night.
And I meant no harm to Jen Monroe, by the way. She
think
was
she
sitting
was.
over there staring at me a little while ago, so I was.
She was not harmed.
Yeah.
Okay,
Doug Ford.
all righty.
I'll make a motion to approve with the changes we have discussed.
Chapter 1, 2, and 3. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Okay, the next item under general business is number 5, which is a proposed Citizens Advisory Committee for Law Enforcement Review. This is an item brought forth at the request of Councilmember Sampson, and it was put together collaboratively again between the city manager, the city attorney, and as well as the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. So essentially, this item was brought forward by the council member to allow, in an interest of creating a forum where concerns and suggestions regarding law enforcement could be heard by the sheriff and considered. We're aware at first blush of 4 vehicles to achieve this goal, and there certainly could be others. And if I could just take a moment, just kind of go through the 4 that we have identified. Number 1, there is an existing quarterly neighborhood outreach meeting, which is currently hosted by Captain Federal. We certainly think that one option would be more frequent neighborhood outreach meetings if that was the desire. The format could be tweaked, that would be an option. So that's number 1. The second thing that could be considered is a new subcommittee of the city council comprised of 2 council members that would be appointed by the mayor. And this, in going through this option, it'd have to have a short and defined purpose. The third would be a new standing committee that's informally appointed by the mayor that exists outside of the city. And then the last would be if the community on its own created a committee with the sheriff department of community leaders, and this would not be comprised of the council or the city in any way, shape, or form. So the main thing here, and this is where the city attorney's office had to be involved in this, is the Brown Act, and as it relates to this proposal, because depending on what option is selected, there may potentially be noticing requirements, and so that's why you guys need to decide how you want to go about doing that. We would just advise you that any requirement to notice does change the dynamic of a meeting, of course, and the nimbleness of the meeting. It also creates an additional, it might not be great, but there's an additional work component with that, because then you're required to capture actions and record those and so forth. So for that reason, it may be the least onerous of the 4 options to consider the neighborhood outreach meeting. And if you need to tweak that, that might be a suggestion. I know that Captain Federal and I have talked about this at length, and he is here obviously to speak on this topic, and he has some insight as well. The Chief Administrative Officer has history with this particular item and might want to interject. But at that, I present it back to you for consideration.
And let me just add one thing about the Brown Act. It's not, if there were to be a committee formed by the council or by the mayor, and it's a standing committee, not only does the Brown Act apply in terms of the noticing requirements of the meeting, but then the members of that committee are governed by the Brown Act, which means they can only talk about this at the meeting. They can't talk about it outside of a meeting. Just like you can't talk about agenda items outside of the meeting, the Brown Act requirements apply to them. So the only business that can be conducted is when there's a meeting. So if they're on the street talking to each other about this, they'd be in technical violation of the Brown Act.
So 1, 2, and 3 avoid Brown Act responsibilities, the way you've written them then, right?
Just number 1, isn't it?
Well, number 2 would if it's a short duration,
Right.
and if it's just consistent of 2 council members for a short duration. So that's not going to be. Number 3 may or may not, depending on the case, depending on how aggressive Brown Act advocates are. If it's whenever it's a standing committee created by, even if it's an informal action, there's an argument that that meeting is a body of the city, even if it's informally. There's one case that's very good that I cite that says that it's not, but that particular case, it was a short duration. If you want to have something that you're going to set up for the a year or so, there's probably the Brown Act would apply to that.
Okay. And also, Captain Federal brought some information. I don't know if you want to share this on item option number 4.
Did you all receive a copy of this? If not, we can certainly.
From Federal?
And just to clarify, on the Brown Act issue, I'm not saying whether it's a good or bad thing.
Right.
You just need to understand that if you do it a certain way, the Brown Act's going to apply.
More laborious.
And again, it's up to you to determine that may be a good thing or it may be a bad thing.
Right. And do you need your notes for 4, or do you have that memorized?
No, ma'am. I don't have it memorized.
But you know that.
Doug Federal, Captain of the Sheriff's Station. Good morning, everyone. I passed out that document to city manager and the mayor last night. I had done some checking of our department policies. Departmentally, we support having community advisory committees. Policy was established years ago to govern our involvement and how the committees should be set up. And our department's position is that if a committee is formed, that because of our departmental standards, there's certain requirements for the people to be on the committee that we'll sit and talk with and get information from. And part of that is a background check of the people that would be on the committee, including looking into their criminal histories, see if there's any wants or warrants on that person, and also a DMV check. And I would be supportive of any kind of drug testing if that was appropriate or I thought it was necessary for someone to be on that committee. But as far as meeting with people, I'm all in favor of it. Most of our stations over town have community advisory committees. They're in larger cities. Here, we've never had one. Since I've been here, we haven't had one. And the reason for that is because it's a small community, and I'm able to meet with everybody all the time. Mayor and I spoke yesterday for 20 minutes or so in the parking lot. Councilmember Cassidy and I spoke recently for maybe 45 minutes. I spoke to Councilmember Sampson the other night at 2:15 in the morning for some time. So I do meet with everybody and speak with everybody. My door's always open, but if somebody felt an extra meeting was necessary, I'm happy to be part of that. The one other requirement that our department has is that for community advisory committees, that it can't be an elected official. It has to be other members of the community. So.
Okay, so where do we go from here? I'll tell you what my concern is and why I brought this to the attention of the city council. Me and you did speak, and we've spoken several times on this. Before this fact, the problem is this: people are afraid to death to speak to the sheriff's department to complain or lodge any complaints because they feel there's going to be retribution for that. It's just a fear that people have. I personally have gotten over that fear because over the years I've had to deal with the sheriff's department in many different situations, and I just wanted to bring out what made this happen is there's been several incidences and several complaints that people have come up to me, but they didn't want to go to you guys to complain. Matter of fact, they actually said that they've talked to you, but they didn't want to complain about it to you guys. So that's why I wanted to represent the members of the community. that did not feel like they were treated with dignity and respect and with the benefit of the doubt. What I feel is that we could probably, between you, myself, and Ben, we could probably, city manager, we could probably sit down and resolve any issues that we have, or we could actually implement a discussion about this kind of thing in our quarterly neighborhood outreach meeting, instead of forming a committee. I wouldn't mind that getting into that committee. You can do background checks on me. You can dwell into any of my personal information that you want, if that's what needs to be done. But what I want to do is bring to your attention what the problems are within the community. And since this is something that I can identify a certain pattern that happens, since I've seen the last 6 lieutenants come and go, your predecessors, and they came and went because I could see that there was a pattern that was starting. And I don't want this pattern that I see the beginnings of to turn into something that we're going to regret into the near future. So I want to make sure, and I want to make it on the record that you and your deputies, mainly you, are the best captain that we've had in our community in the 53 years that that I've been here, and in the 43 years that I can remember from a kid to right now. The best LA County Sheriff's personnel that we've had. So I want to establish and continue this relationship with you, and just let you know the severity, which I'm letting you know right now, of what these complaints were, and then maybe you can just make these corrections off the record. If we want to go on the record, we want to make all this stuff public, we can do that. But I'm like I said, people don't want their names out there with the sheriff's department. They're frightened to death of making a complaint, especially when there's something going on or an incident happening. So that's where I want to go with this. If we want to just continue this as to be an extension of the neighborhood outreach, or is this the same thing as the community watch program, neighborhood watch?
First off, thank you for the support and the compliments. I appreciate it. And I'm just one person. It's the deputies that are assigned to the station now that are doing all the great work and have opened the doors of communication, I think, with a lot of people in the community. To you folks and to the public, anybody can come to me anytime with no worries of any kind of retaliation from myself or any of the deputies. We have an open door policy. If anybody wants to make a complaint or is not happy with any service that they've received, they can come in and speak to me anytime. I've given out my cell phone number. I put a line into my home in case it's after hours and someone wants to call me, 310-510-1025. They can call me at the station. I'm always open to hearing any concerns that people may have. The nice thing about the meetings and all the meetings that we have, and there's the Community Watch meeting, which the VFW has taken a big role in choices and establishing and creating that. That's a monthly meeting. I do the quarterly neighborhood outreach. It was something I started earlier in the year. We combined it with the last Community Watch meeting, but that's something the community wanted quarterly, so that's why I have that when we do. I'm happy to help in any way I can. The last Community Watch meeting, I made the theme of that meeting focusing on the future, because I think a lot of things have happened in the past, whether it was 4 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I try to direct people to think about today and tomorrow and what we can do to make the community better for tomorrow, and try to put past things behind. I realize some of those things are traditional family things with concerns about law enforcement, but it's a different day. We operate differently, and we're much more open to working with the community.
Absolutely, and I've noticed that for sure. I mean, from the day you got here, it's been a better situation. It's just I have to identify with some of the problems that the people come to me with. So, how would be the easiest way to suggest that this would be resolved right here and now, that without having to go ahead and create a new meeting, which this is going to take more of our already busy schedule up, and so if me and Ben and Doug can meet on a need-to basis from time to time when each of us feels that there's a need to, or if I call for it, you or Ben call for it, could we do that? And then I'd be happy to show up to any of these meetings that you're going to be having. I am already a member of the Neighborhood Watch program with Paul Perea, and I think there would be a resolve to that because I already have an established communication with you, but I felt a need to bring it up here because there was some constituents of mine in the community that wanted to see this addressed at a city council meeting. So I'm just going to assure everybody that Mr. Federal is definitely the best and most trustworthy LA County sheriffs that we have had in this community in the last 53 years that I've lived here. And I'd like to continue that relationship on through the next 4 years that I'll be a city councilman, and then hopefully farther on into the future. So what do I have to do to make this
I don't think anything. I think that I've written that down as a directive, and I will instruct our staff and Gabby in particular that as these needs arise, she will need to put together a meeting quickly. I know Doug is, like you, very eager to meet when there's something we need to discuss, and I'll make myself available. And then we'll also continue to encourage, obviously, the neighborhood outreach participation too.
I would agree, and I would say the same for anybody. If Councilman Hernandez wanted to meet with me and the city manager, we could do that. I'm available
Or
just
if
about
appropriate,
any time.
without me too. I mean, if there are times when, that's fine as well. Doug, I know, is, whatever works, absolutely.
Okay.
We're good.
Yeah, and I encourage the public to go, if you haven't met Captain Federal, go out and shake his hand, get to know him. He's a very, very good law enforcement officer, but he's a good human being as well, and I feel he's very trustworthy. So let's extend our trust to each other and make this community better together, and we can do this. Thank you very much for being here, Captain Federal.
Thank you, and on behalf of the deputies, thank you for your expression of support. Appreciate it.
Keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
What's the pleasure of the council?
I'm against any additional government. I think we already have a program in place, and I fully support the program we already have. I've had a couple conversations with Captain Federal, more than an open door policy. Always available, stop on the side of the street, have a quick conversation if it needs to be, or a long one. And I don't want any more, government meetings or that where we take away from the spirit of communication. Because if we do put 2, 3, or 4 in place, I fear that then less and less people are going to participate, because now it's it's just run where you have to take meeting minutes and follow up on actions. And I like the spirit of getting together in the plaza at Pete's Cafe and just having some conversations.
So is this a no action item?
I think since Councilmember Sampson brought this up, I think from what I'm getting, he's satisfied with the ability to have meetings with the sheriff and the city manager whenever he feels it is appropriate, and that goes to all the council people. Mm-hmm. I think that's
absolutely right.
Okay, good. So
yes,
then
it's resolved.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
We don't know action taken.
Right.
There's
No
no action
action.
taken. No.
Great.
It's just the communication that we just had, and it's mostly that they're doing a great job, and I'm going to back them up. And me and Captain Federal will talk as we usually do on the street, and we'll keep up our lines of communication and continue to make Catalina a better, safer place to live and love
Thank you, Joe.
and work. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you,
Item
Pat.
number 6.
Yes, item number 6 is a proposal to enter into 3 separate agreements with a firm referred to as HDL, Hinderleiter, Delamis, Corin, and Cohn. Kind of a mouthful, that's why we just say HDL. But what HDL does, and I've got experience from working with them past municipal assignments, is they provide analysis to the city. They find the holes, they find the trends, and they allow for the city to realize revenue that you might not normally get. And it's not a large percentage, but the dollars add up. We're talking, historically, they generally help cities to realize 3 to 5% of misallocated sales tax that you're not receiving, which doesn't sound like a lot until you realize that in Avalon's case, that could be $15,000 to $20,000 every year that you're not getting now that you should be getting. How do they do this? Well, they look at various sectors of the economy. They have contracts with cities throughout the state, and so they know things like, oh, you've got this type of business, this is the size of your community. Well, generally we see sales in the amount of X for this type of operation, and what we've seen in our analysis is that they're only reporting Y, and so we believe that they might be underreporting. Or they might be categorizing themselves as one type of business when maybe they're another type of business, and so forth. So it's analysis, it's trends, it's also information that we are not able to get our hands on as nimbly now as we would like to. An example would be, hey, last year the month of May seemed like a really busy time. What can you tell me about that? In particular, there was an event on this weekend, and I want to know more about what the benefit was that was reaped in the community. This is another tool that will more easily allow us to provide you with that information. Oh, we realized that this was the impact to our bottom line based upon that one event. It is an additional cost that the city would have to realize in order to pay for these services, but that money, based upon their historical performance in other cities, which we'd be happy to provide you with a list of their client cities, it's vast. They've demonstrated that they more than pay for themselves. And it's really something that we see as a tool that you guys could have at your disposal, that I could have at my disposal, that we could provide you with more information about your economy here, what you're getting, but more importantly, in some cases, what you're not getting and you should be getting that we need to look into. And Gina, who's here, has done the legwork to put this together. And if we have any specific questions on that, I know Gina can answer those. Is there anything, Gina, that I failed to mention you think that needs to be brought up at this time, briefly?
Yes, one of the biggest benefits on the budget side is they provide projections for sales tax as well and property tax. So that helps greatly in your budget processes. What they do with the data is that they'll go back, and this will be a little brief, they'll take information, just say there's misallocation. They'll put that allocation in the correct quarter that it was earned. Right now, when we get the checks from the state, it's X dollars, and we don't know when that was really earned. There could have been some kind of audit on the state side, but we just got it in the month of January. So there's no trend. HDL comes in and says that money was earned last June, and that's when the spike. That's where we can get the quarter-to-quarter comparisons on the Grand Prix and get a sense of trends. Of course, as staff, we'll have to create a calendar to help us analyze why things may happen. But that's the biggest benefit. And for economic development as well, business retention, who are, what sector is the largest sales tax provider for us? A lot of cities use it that way. It's actually a staple in most finance and economic development departments in the state of California.
So I'm just curious about, so they find, let's say I have a cash business, and let's say I have an all cash business and HDL comes in. Walk me through the process.
It would be a collaborative process with staff. We actually have 2 sets of information. We have confidential, of course, this is confidential information, and then information that we can give to you in a report. On the confidential side, Ben may take a look at it and say, I'm not seeing this business that I know exists, and it is supposed to provide sales tax. And that's when we would actually assist HDL in that process and identifying, and then they would go through their processes to provide the audit. So it's really looking at all your data. The data that we receive isn't based by industry type, it's just a check.
I guess
so they provide that comparison.
Yeah, and before I forget, I'm sorry, I'm a little off topic, but the other service that they provide is this ranking of your top sales tax producers within the community. Now that's also correct. Confidential, but as a council member, you would be privy to that. Why is that important? In business deals that we maybe put together and considerations that we need to make, it gives you some additional information that you might not have considered about a particular entity. Mm-hmm. Wow, I had no idea that particular business contributed so much to our economy. It allows me to think about them a little bit differently as I consider something that we're proposing, you know.
And so then you say, well, this business, boy, this really looks like they haven't paid their fair share. Where's the teeth? What happens? How does that money, how does that happen?
And then they work with the state of California. There are other databases that we combine. They'll use our business tax license program to see who's assigned a business license. Then they'll work with the state on other business type fees or paperwork that's submitted to compare and contrast. Mm-hmm. And then they work with the business to identify that.
So then they come in and
correct.
Intercede or whatever.
Well, ultimately, if working with the state, we determine that they're not paying their taxes, then the municipal code currently allows us to go after them with, we could threaten legal action, but hopefully we bring them into compliance and they write the appropriate check. Mm-hmm. But so the issue is, it is difficult for us currently to understand how much money we may not be getting, and so this is a tool to provide us with that information, so that when we write our demand letters, we can hopefully get the appropriate. We will have backup for it, but it is going to ultimately. Usually, I've worked with them in many cities. It usually results in voluntary compliance by the businesses when they're confronted with the data. Like, you've been telling the state this, and you're telling the city this. That's not right. Ultimately, you probably need to have one or two cases where you actually go after someone to kind of put the fear of God into the other businesses. But it's been very, very successful. And the other aspect, the fun aspect of it is that with the resolution, because there's two agreements and then there's a resolution. So the resolution allows you to get this information. And for instance, in one city, which is a huge city that I represented, it turned out that the Olive Garden was the #1 sales tax generator in the city. The Olive Garden. I was like, what? And like that was it. And then so the city was very nice to Olive Garden because you knew that this was your largest sales tax generator. So when they came up for an expansion, that was useful information to have. So anyway, it's fun stuff too. Mm-hmm.
It says there's a 25% fee for any property tax recovered. I'm just afraid that will be like a bounty. But yeah. I understand that that fee is something that might be well deserved as a bounty for the work that you provided. But it seems like quite a bit, 25%. Of the property tax recovered, your company will receive, or HDL will receive. Is that true?
Yes, and the odds on the property tax side that we have that issue are very, very small since we're an island. But there is a potential. So they would be looking at the successor revenue that we have versus what we get in the general fund. and then providing that. And my understanding, what they've confirmed with me, is that they wouldn't charge that 25% on identifying that if there was a misallocation of property tax to the successor agency versus the city. So it's highly unlikely that they would find anything in the property tax side for us, but they're going to clean up the data for us. It's mostly for the assessments that we're looking for. They have an incredible database on the property tax side that provides a GIS environment for us, so we can actually look at it and find the boundaries, look at the boundaries of the property via APN number.
I think the distinction between the 25% for the property tax and the 15% for the sales tax is from what HDL is telling us, is to recover property tax, you have to, it's more difficult because it's property taxes. You have to work with the county because the county is the party that collects that, and there's, you know, it's property. To collect it, you've got to maybe a lien on the property. It's a more difficult process than sales tax, where you can just have the, you know, have the state more easily allocate the correct money or go right to the business. Property tax is a little bit more difficult, and what HDL is saying is this is found money. If you don't enter into this agreement with us, you know, there's lost revenue out there. People are basically cheating you, and so we want to be motivated to find out where that lost revenue is, and it's just more difficult for property versus sales tax.
Understand.
I am just looking for a clarification. Statewide, HDL has seen at least 3.5% of local sales tax misallocated after audit services are performed, which could equate to increased revenues for the city of conservatively between $15,000 and $25,000, even accounting for the recovery fee. So the cost for both of these is the actual cost, regardless of recovery fee, would be $54,000 to the city. So the recovery fee, is that, are you saying?
No.
You're saying
We're
that.
saying that the net gain to the city is conservatively estimated at between $15,000 and $25,000
after all fees
Right.
paid.
The
Okay,
net-
it
the
just
net
stated
received.
the recovery fee, so I just wanted to.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, because it seems like even if we were to derive, you know, $25,000 from this, we're still paying $54,000 for over a 5-year service. So it just didn't seem to pencil out to me. But if that amount includes the actual cost of the service over the 5 years or so, then
Actually, the 15%, what happens there is that they're finding revenue from the past. It's 15% of whatever they find in the past. Going forward, they don't continue to get the 15% on our revenues. That's ours, 100%. But in the past, anything they find that they're able to get, and in this case, it has to do with misallocation by the state. So what the state would do in that situation is they'll just take it from the city that shouldn't have gotten it and then give it to us. And they'll take a percentage of that only after we receive the revenue.
okay.
So then they cut the check. Then they would bill us for that, 15% of that found amount in the past.
So then my other concern was, and I'm just looking for a clarification to make sure that I heard it correctly. So if we were to enter into this agreement with HDL, and if they felt that some businesses were maybe not participating, we're now saying we're giving them, HDL, the right to go in and audit those particular businesses? How does that, I don't understand how that could work.
So from what I remember from my past experiences, they bring it to the city's attention, and then it's along the lines of what Gina and Scott were both saying, where then they follow the appropriate established channels, wherein the state of California makes an inquiry.
Okay.
And then we also have measures afforded to us through the municipal code where we're able to legally generate a notice when we become aware of something like that. So it wouldn't be HDL coming in there knocking on their door so much as it's just information turned over to the state, brought to our attention so that we can then pursue it.
Okay.
And this agreement is for 3 years?
It's-
start? I was kind of confused.
It's really month to month, but the contract's for 5 years in total, 3 years at the existing rate, and in the 4th and 5th year, an increase in CPI.
So after 2 years, we go, man, we haven't recovered anything.
After 30 days.
For 3 days.
What this agreement does is it sets the rates for the next 5 years.
Right.
But if you don't like it, it's 30-day cancellation.
Okay, but what do you think is an adequate amount of time to begin seeing something?
In the staff report, I indicated a year. If staff isn't utilizing the information, the databases they provide, at a year, we'll have an evaluation of what the performance is based on staff's use and as well as any recovery.
For them, I mean, $5,445 or $5,500, whatever. This isn't something they're having to work on full time, huh? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's.
What's the question?
I don't know, because it's only for what, $4,500.
Well, it's actually 3 separate agreements. So there's an agreement for property tax analysis, there's an
Right.
agreement for sales tax analysis, and then there's a resolution wherein we allow them to reach out to the State Board of Equalization on our behalf for those monies that are collected here in the city. So because there are potential lost revenue in property tax and potential lost revenue in sales tax, and also trends that we may not be aware of, they have these 3 separate agreements that allow us to get all that data that we can look at. And I think, just going back to what Gina was talking about, a year will allow us to make it through the cycle of the season so we can see where we were missing out on money. Essentially, I firmly believe that we'll get some found money that we wouldn't otherwise have had because we just frankly don't have the resources or the expertise to gather that. So spend some to get some would be kind of my bottom line on this one.
And then the optional services in 6.2, fees for optional services. The following services are available. County research. I mean, are we going to be getting into, because the optional services, when you look at the rates, that's why I'm saying, how can they do this for $4,500? I mean, I just.
Oh, what, you mean how are they able to do this? Is that the question? Is how they're able to do all of this?
For $4,500.
They're a large organization, and it's through scale. And they have, frankly, they've sophisticated algorithms, and they've got formulas that they rely upon, and they've got expertise. So they know, for instance, you've got a restaurant, this type of food, this number of seats, this type of community. We would expect that you would normally see this, and this is based upon our experience in these type of communities where we have similar functions. So that's how they're able to do it. It's just because they have this wide net of clients that they're able to compare, and then they have their own algorithms and processes that they use, and so that it's through volume that they're able to do that.
Right. Okay.
And I can let you know that they did reduce their rates for us on the property tax side.
Okay.
And they do, when you look at other cities who have more income, they do charge significantly there. So I believe we're getting the benefit of that. They've collected this data for LA County specifically since, I believe it's 1995.
Mm-hmm.
So they really actually have had Avalon in their books for a while because they're looking at everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just getting us set up in the database and getting their relationship, getting them to know us. They'll be coming to us on a quarterly basis for sales tax. Via property tax, it'll be more like a Skyping situation, but it's going to be one of the more interesting quarterly reports that you'll be getting.
And I seem to recall, and you can chime in, both of you, Lloyd DeLamas, the principal, I seem to remember he's an old-time city manager from way back, and
Yes.
so he discovered while serving as city manager that this would be something that would be useful. So then when he retired, he created this company, and this is what they do. And they also employ a lot of other former city managers to help them and finance directors to cull this data. So they know cities. It's their thing.
It'll help. I like to think of it, it's going to help us know who we are in the sales tax area.
Questions?
6 to 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's better we can get at the bank, right? Any other questions? Gina, we're ready to go?
Are we, so if we enter into this agreement with this company, and we don't see that it is working out for us, can we get out of the agreement?
30 days. You can pull the trigger, yep.
In 30, it has to be in 30 days?
30 days notice, yes.
Oh, 30 days notice?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that's,
But we would,
do we have to have a contract set up for them after a certain amount of time?
The contract is in the packet, so we've already negotiated the contract, so we're ready to go.
we think that probably you guys would want to allow them a year to show their stuff. And I think that in that year, I mean, it would certainly be we're going to be working with them because we want to bring this money in. Because that's money that you guys could use for something that you don't have now. We'd love to be able to say, hey, here's $20,000 that we can use for something we've been wanting to do.
That is if that money is recovered, correct?
Right.
I think a year is a fair start. Say we should at least give it a year to see how it goes, and then talk about it again.
And we'd also be happy to bring them out here to talk about some of their methods. I mean, I think that they would be happy to share with you how they go about doing things and how it works, and some of their past success.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, it's, yeah.
Should.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve.
Can we just go 1, 2, and 3 both, all
Yes.
at the same time?
Yes, you can.
Staff recommendation.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve based on the staff's recommendation for items 1, 2, and 3.
I'll second.
All for the vote?
All ayes.
And now we will be
Yeah, we do
going
have
to a closed
we
session.
do have two closed sessions based upon current information that we're going to give to you. I think the closed sessions will be 10 to 15 minutes total, just an update, and so that will give us time to at least start the meeting.
Well, maybe as a suggestion, we go into closed session, we come out, and let's be realistic. Maybe we have to say, okay, we need to talk about when we can
Right.
do this. We can talk about the material you've been provided with. I don't really imagine it's a worthwhile exercise to dive headfirst into something that we can only do for 10, 15 minutes. I know we all have commitments today, and that was one of the things when we scheduled this. We wanted to be respectful that you've got other things today that you got to go do.
Yeah, I have a boat at 11 too. I mean,
Absolutely.
I got to get out
Okay.
at 11.
Now,
So-
Councilmember Hernandez,
That's fine.
similar, has got something he's got to do too. So.
Okay, so we have two closed sessions, conference with real property negotiators. This is regarding the race course for the Catalina Island Grand Prix in 2014. We also have conference with labor negotiators with the 3 unions. So, and with respect to portions of item number 1, council members McGugan and Hernandez will be recusing themselves due to potential conflict of interest.
Item number 1 now? Okay.
Okay? Okay, yeah.
And we are back from the closed session. Is there anything to report?
No reportable action?
All right, well, I think we can adjourn this meeting then?
I have one brief announcement.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Proposition 42, I'm not taking a position on this, I'm just merely advising you that each year the city is required by the Brown Act to do all sorts of things, and we submit a bill to the city, to the state of California, and they reimburse us for the cost of complying with the Brown Act. Proposition 42 will eliminate that payment to the city. So if we want to, if the city wants to continue to get reimbursed for compliance with the Brown Act, you vote no on Proposition 42. If you want to not get reimbursed from the state, you vote yes on 42. I'm not telling you how to vote, that's just what the proposition is.
One other very quick announcement, and we will talk to you all individually, but we are looking to potentially convene sexual harassment training next Tuesday, the 27th, I believe. So we would look to probably convene 2 different sessions to allow you to be able to take one or the other. It's going to be mandatory, obviously, for everyone to participate.
Okay.
Yeah, you are required under state law
As are the employees.
to have it.
Ethics
so-
and sexual
Ethics
harassment.
and sexual harassment, so.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Any further action? Okay. Meeting is adjourned.